Everyone. Thank you for joining us for the SPUR Student Experience panel. My name is Sarah Rhodes. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm an academic advisor with the Rouser College of Natural Resources, as well as your SPUR Fall and Spring Coordinator. I will be serving as moderator for this session. Also assisting me with the moderation of this information session is Temple Byers, our Summer SPUR Coordinator and our RCNR Scheduler.
Hello, everyone. It's so nice to see everyone. Temple Byers, pronouns she, they, and I'll be helping with this today. And also remember, you can come and ask any questions about enrollment during my drop-ins.
Awesome. Thanks, Temple. To start us off, I'd like to discuss with you the outline for today's session before introducing our panelists. As you can see, you've all been muted. This has been done to prevent background noise from entering this session, as well as prevent too many people from talking at once. In addition, please consider turning off your webcam to save bandwidth and prevent lag. After we introduce our panel and go through some basic information about the SPUR program, we will open the Q&A feature and you can send us your questions. Temple and myself will be monitoring the questions and we'll direct them to the panel in an orderly fashion. We expect all participants to abide by the UC Berkeley principles of community so that we can maintain a safe, caring, and humane environment, and we'll be removing individuals who violate these principles. Lastly, we'll be recording the session and Q&A log. Now that we've gotten all the logistics out of the way, I'd like to introduce our three panelists. Joining us, we have Chris Fleming, Morgan Hanley, and Emily Savernak. Panelists, please introduce yourselves, share your name, pronouns, major, and the SPUR lab that you were in last fall. We can go ahead and start with Chris, then go in alphabetical order.
Hey everyone, my name is Chris. My pronouns are he, him. I transferred to Berkeley last fall. My major is molecular environmental biology, and good to meet you guys.
Can you share a little about the SPUR lab you were in last fall, Chris?
Oh, sure, yeah. I was in Rachel Brem's lab. It's in Koshland Hall, so it's plant and microbial biology.
Hi everyone, my name is Morgan. I use they, them pronouns, and I'm a third year studying conservation and resource studies. I'm also a transfer, so this is my second semester here at Berkeley. And last semester, I had the chance to work with the Karuk Tribal UC Berkeley Collaborative, which does work with the Karuk tribe, does different research and advocacy projects with the tribe.
My name is Emily. I go by she, her pronouns. I'm a second year studying molecular environmental biology as well. And I got to be a part of the Mary Firestone lab. And the specific project I was working under focused on bacterial and fungi interactions in specifically grassland ecosystems.
Awesome, thank you guys. I want to start by giving a quick overview of the SPUR program. The Sponsored Projects for Undergraduate Research program encourages faculty and undergraduate students within RCNR to collaborate on research projects by providing grant funding to support their joint project. The funding for this program is generously donated by Rouser College alumni, and students may participate in the SPUR program by applying to faculty-initiated projects or by creating their own student-initiated project. This panel will be highlighting how to navigate applying to a faculty-initiated project. Currently, students can submit their applications for up to 3 faculty-initiated projects between now and January 24th at 5 p.m. To apply, you need a resume, personal statement, and unofficial transcripts. And some of the SPUR projects may also require an interview before selection. We have a couple questions that we want to start off with. I'll list them all now so that you as the audience can think about them. And the Q&A feature is open so that you can start submitting your questions as well. First, what do you know now that you wish you knew back when you were first applying to SPUR projects? Second, how did you navigate the resume and personal statement for the SPUR application? What resources did you use? And third, what did the supervision look like in your fall SPUR lab? Did you primarily work with the faculty, postdocs, and graduate students? So let's start with question 1. What do you know now about SPUR that you wish you knew back when you first started applying to SPUR projects? And I'll start again in alphabetical order with you, Chris.
Sure, yeah, just looking back to last semester when I was considering applying to projects, I would say, it might seem a little intimidating, especially if you're a transfer student, because you're sort of in a new environment and you're wondering if, you should be doing undergrad research right away when you transfer. But it really was, a fluid process of sort of applying and interviewing and sort of starting up in the lab. You don't have to, I wouldn't say you have to worry about, they're not going to force you to like be overloaded with work. And, they'll sort of figure out what would work best, and you can decide how much you'll be in the lab, like unit or hour wise or not. So yeah, I would just say if you're really curious about doing it, I would suggest just go ahead and, finding a project that you're interested in and applying and, take it from there.
I have a similar kind of viewpoint to Chris, where I came in and I was a little bit intimidated about research because it wasn't something I'd done before. And I thought, oh, you need a lot of experience to be able to do an opportunity like SPUR. And that really wasn't the case. I think that we all bring from all the different experience that we have a lot of different skill sets that can be applied in a lab setting. So there's a lot of different types of research projects. Some might be more focused on like writing or like literature review versus some might be more in the lab. So kind of consider what specifically you're interested, what you have experience in, and don't be hesitant to apply for something because you can find skills that kind of transfer over. And then I think the other part that I kind of learned through the projects is just like there's so much benefit to getting that kind of more applied experience doing a project and really seeing how the concepts that you learn about apply in the real world. So that's a part of SPUR that I really, really enjoyed.
I'd have to agree with everybody that said something so far. I like definitely whenever you were applying or whenever I felt like I was applying, I felt like whenever I saw like the preferred qualifications, I felt like I never met any of them and it almost made me just like give up on the applications at all. Like I didn't even consider them because just because I didn't have a certain skill they were asking for, I thought there would be no way I could get in. Um, but I felt like the project that I'm currently in right now, or for the fall, I like took a risk because it was asking for like technical, like wiring, like electrical wiring, like skills, and I was like, I had none of those skills, but like I knew that I had the interest, and I think that's probably one of the main reasons why I was accepted was that they could tell that I had a genuine interest in the topic. So like even if your skills don't perfectly align with the preferred qualifications, I think if you have a genuine interest, you should still apply and like still apply for that specific project no matter what.
Thank you guys so much. Yeah, I really appreciate what you're highlighting here about like, it can be a really intimidating process and we might not feel like we have the experience necessary, but things like transferable skills can go a long way, as well as like general enthusiasm about the topic. I think that I've heard over and over faculty talk about how much they sponsor students for SPUR based on their enthusiasm for the project. Second question, how did you navigate creating resumes and personal statements for the SPUR applications, and what resources did you use? I think we'll start this time with Morgan and then go back around.
Sure. So on the resume side, I hadn't really gone in and like really updated my resume and things like that. So it's definitely a very time consuming process. So if that's something you haven't done super recently, just make sure you're leaving enough time because there are a lot of list like technical things that you want to make sure that you hit and all like make sure you have no typos, that your resume and stuff is very clean. So definitely leave yourself some more time. One resource that I utilized a little bit later on for my resume in the semester is the drop-in hours with the career services. That was so wonderful. I just walked in, got within 5 minutes, got to meet with a student who helped look over my resume and give me feedback. That took a whole like 20 minutes and it was so helpful. So that's one resource you can use. And then in terms of writing the kind of cover letter equivalent of your interest, I think it's really about like reading the position in a lot of detail. I know every time I would like go back and edit my writing, I'd re-look and like reread the description and make sure that when you're talking about like transferable skills or your interests, that you're talking about very specific things that they bring up. One thing that I did is just like consider papers that I've written in classes, projects that I've done, and how are those applicable to the kind of work that I might be doing in my SPUR project, and really highlighting like, this is what I learned from that project, and this is why it's a transferable skill. So just being as specific as possible, I think really helps. And also, like Emily said, just showing a lot of enthusiasm and the willingness to like grow and really like show up there and learn, I think is what a lot of faculty members are looking for. So those are the two kind of big pieces of advice that I have for that.
I also agree about like making your resumes and personal statements really specific towards the project you're applying to. Again, like looking at the description and looking at what they're looking for, like you should be very specific, and like you shouldn't be using the same resume or personal statement for like all the 3 projects you apply for. You need to change every single one to be very specific. Personally, for me, when creating the resumes, I was thankful, or I'm appreciative that in my freshman year, I had taken a Nat Res 24 class. It's a freshman seminar, and it was pretty much about like how to write a good resume, how to write a good cover letter. So I don't know if that class is offered still or if you can take it, but if it is available, you should take it. I thought it was really helpful. Again, it's pretty much a class where they teach you how to write a good resume. So, and then for personal statements, I would say I would send it to like, or what I did was sending it to trusted people to look over it and read over it, and like also sending the project and asking for any advice on how to change it. I know that they have CNR pals, like counseling services in like Mulford, that you can like go and ask them and talk to them as well, like to like read over your paper, or if you're close with your counselor, like just like maybe sending it to a few people and asking for any advice, and if it sounds good, because sometimes when you're rewriting the personal statement over and over, you can't even tell like what's wrong, or like you just need some like outside opinions. So that's my advice.
Yeah, I definitely agree with the approach from Morgan and Emily as well. I sort of did the same thing, and first after finding the research projects that you want to apply for is sort of reading into this specific project description, and then also going to the lab's website just to see as a whole like what other research projects they have going on, or like the PI's general statement of like what they're interested in the lab, just to learn a bit more in depth about what they do in the lab specifically. And I sort of use that when I wrote my cover letter. I sort of wanted to acknowledge some of the aspects of the project I was interested in, like trying to emphasize my interest or enthusiasm about it. And then also, I think I try to tie in, maybe even relevant coursework that I did in the past, or courses that I was taking during fall last semester. Like, I don't think I mentioned earlier, but my lab project is focused on like fungal genetics. I took a practical genomics course last semester, and I said, like, I've been curious about this. I'm taking this course this semester, and might go like hand in hand in ways. And then also just sort of highlighting why you want to be there, and sort of how it might work if you're interested in it, sort of what you want to do with your educational and that career in the future, like how that might tie in as well. But I'd say mainly, you don't need to have a lot of lab experience if that's the case or anything, but I think like showing your enthusiasm and interest and like knowing about the lab a bit is a really I think a good approach to it. And then let's see, for my resume, I sort of just had like a bulk resume of my previous work experience and my coursework and stuff. And for each project, I just went through and wrote 3 different cover letters and 3 different resumes to what might be most relevant. Like the panelist said, you don't want to like send the same cover letter and resume to each one unless there might be some overlap, but you really want to sort of like tailor it to that position. And let's see, resources. I know there's a few, like the wildlife club, there's some students that were chatting just like even on the like Discord channels about like considering applying to SPUR and projects. And some students were talking about like they did it the previous year, and they sort of gave some tips and tricks, and maybe shared an example of like a previous cover letter just to see like how to get a general idea of how to sort of start to tailor it. And that sort of helped sort of kick it off for me, I would say. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for sharing. I also want to give a shout out to our fabulous peer advisors who Emily highlighted, who started their office hours today, and they're available. And then Emily also highlighted our NatRes 76. And this is a Google form to fill out if you're interested in taking this class. It's being offered this spring. It used to be 24, but now 76. And then I'm also dropping in the chat Career Center website, which has lots of good information on like personal statements and resumes as well. Okay, so for our third question, what did the supervision look like in your fall SPUR lab? Did you primarily work with the faculty or postdoc / graduate students? And we'll start this one with Emily.
I would say that I primarily worked with the postdocs. There was two main ones that in the very beginning, like was usually just explaining what the project's like objective was and like the to-dos pretty much to do that fall semester. But I was also very thankful that I could also meet some of the grad students also working there and also undergrads who also were accepted through SPUR. So I would say that I pretty much worked with like every type of person in the lab.
Chris, do you want to go next?
Oh yeah, sure. So primarily I worked with the postdoc on the project. That would be like in the lab. At first we were doing lab work together, you know, and I'm sort of being more trained. And then eventually I would do stuff independently or we'd work together if our schedules fit. And then I would say on top of that, just having lab meetings like with the PI or just the lab as a whole, you can sort of collaborate in that way. But I would say as the semester progressed, there's more like independence on the sake of lab work. And then also there's even other postdocs on separate projects, but they're maybe, you know, they're more familiar with like dry lab techniques like computational biology. And like that sort of was going to start to flow into my project. So, you know, I was starting to reach out to them about some basic general sort of help with that. But I would say, yeah, mainly the postdoc who was my like mentee for the project.
So my project looked a little bit different. So I wasn't in a lab. My main role was to do literature review for the Karuk Tribe's animal monitoring program. So I got to do my work kind of independently at home or kind of in my own time, which provided a lot of flexibility. And so how it worked for me and the other two SPUR interns that I worked with is we'd meet once a week with Dr. Jennifer Sauerwein, who was one of the co-founders of the collaborative, as well as Dr. Daniel Sarna. And then we'd have a weekly meeting, we'd check in, we'd give kind of an overview of how our week went, where we got in our research, what more support we needed, and then we kind of outline a plan for like the next week, the next coming week. So we had that kind of weekly check-in to make sure we were all kind of up to date, we were sharing information, we could plan for future meetings and things like that. But then the actual work that we did was all at home, but it had like both Dan and Jennifer had access to it, and so could kind of keep up with what we were doing and were available over email for any questions or additional support.
And thank you guys so much for sharing. So we'll go ahead and kick off our Q&A. Attendees, please remember that you can like throw your questions into the Q&A and we will be asking them to the participants. So our first question is, was there a need to prepare for difficult questions in your interviews? And how did you prepare for your interviews in general? And whoever wants to take this first.
I would say they didn't like ask very difficult questions, I feel like, in my interview. But I would say the way that I prepared still was something that Chris had said, which is looking at their like lab website and like looking at some of the research they've done and seeing like, yeah, like what type of work they've done. But again, I did not prepare too much because I was also like super unaware of what type of questions they'd ask. But they were just, I don't know if mine was a great example because I think it was mainly like a when are you available to work? Like how many hours was I planning to work for that like lab and things like that. So
For me, I get a little bit nervous like prior to interviews. So I was like kind of beforehand, I was like, let me kind of look over the position again. And then I just kind of like bullet pointed some like key things that I knew I maybe wanted to talk about just so I felt a little bit more prepared, like why I was interested, what I was hoping to learn, like what past experience I have, kind of those typical questions that you expect are going to come up in some way. And I just thought I had that pulled up as a Zoom interview on the side of my screen just in case I got nervous. I was like, I am prepared. One or like a couple kinds of questions I didn't really expect were like asked about like, oh, do you tend to work more independently or in a group? Like, do you prefer more supervision versus not? And I kind of got thrown off guard because I was like, oh, is there a right answer? Like, should I say one thing or the other? But really, they're just looking to get to know like your work style so that you can they can best support you in the project. So I got a little nervous being like, should I have said this or this? But I think you just being honest with them and being like, this is kind of the support I need, or I am someone who likes more supervision versus not, is kind of the way to go. So I wouldn't be too nervous, but they are getting to know you, not just like as a student, but like how you're going to work like in a lab and a team. So just kind of consider those as questions that could come up as well.
Yeah, I would say my interview process was really similar to both of the panelists. It seemed like it was more of an interview to sort of get to know the person that was applying to the position and not necessarily like testing your knowledge on the subject or something. But I think my strategy was the same, like rereading the project position description and the sort of, yeah, like the lab website and maybe thinking of any questions that you might have for them, like at the end of the interview. But it was pretty relaxed. Like it, yeah, I was definitely nervous at first. It was my first like interview since before the pandemic, like in person. But yeah, it was like a pretty casual conversation, just to like get to know each other. And yeah, so I'd say jitters happen, but it's not this massive like career interview, I would say. But yeah.
Thank you guys for providing that perspective. Second question is, how do the in-person lab meetings work? How are they scheduled? What happens if you have a previous commitment during that time? Whoever wants to go first.
I would say, well, specifically for the last question about like what happens if you have a previous commitment, like I think at least personally for my postdocs, they were all very understanding. Like even during the interview, they were talking about how like even if I have to cut down my hours like for a certain week because I'm like busy with midterms or something, they like definitely stress that you're a student first before the SPUR project, which I really appreciated. So again, your postdoc will most likely be very understanding. At least again, mine were whenever I had like something up like coming up and I like couldn't come to my normally scheduled like lab time. Um, Also with the scheduling, they usually just asked also during the interview, like, what days would you be available and like what time? So again, just being really open and communicating with your postdoc is probably the best idea. Like don't tell them the day of if you can't show up. Like tell them a few days in advance. And again, they're usually very understanding.
For the weekly meeting that I had, we just someone made a when to meet, and then Jennifer and Dan kind of coordinated a time that worked for all of us. So it was very kind of understanding of people's schedule. And like Emily said, just communicate if you can't make it to things, and everyone's very understanding.
Yeah, I think for our lab, we use when to meet as well. And it's like the entire lab would sort of submit their availability. And I know like some undergrads could make it to the lab meeting and some couldn't. And it wasn't like, it was totally fine if you couldn't make it because of school. And then my same approach was like letting my mentor know my class schedule. And they were totally, fine figuring out a schedule around that. And then like around, like finals or midterm time, I would say like, hey, would it be okay if I, took a few days to study, and they were totally fine and understanding about that. So I'd say they support, he was a student first. So yeah, there's a lot of flexibility and the ideal schedule will definitely work out.
Another question from our audience, if any of you are introverts, how do you prepare for interviews?
Yeah, I would say I'm definitely an introvert. Breathe deep and maybe walk a block around campus before you do it. But I would say my best technique would be just being familiar with the position and the lab, just so you feel like you have more of an understanding. And yeah, I would say just sort of putting yourself out there to apply. And yeah, interviews are always kind of intimidating, but I think you'll be happy you did it, even if you don't do the position. But it's a great experience, sort of applying and interviewing and stuff. But I'd say introverts can do it as well.
I think something that I did was like I created like some interview questions that I think they could ask. Again, things about like maybe why you want to apply or why are you interested. I pretty much just gave this like sheet of paper to a friend and then I told her to like ask me them in a random order and I just practiced how I would answer. And then obviously ask the friend for feedback if something sounded weird that I said or like I should fix my answer for a question. So maybe finding a friend that you're comfortable talking to and like having them help you.
Yeah, I think both of those are great. Like I did something similar, just kind of prepping, having answers down myself and being like, okay, well, I know I have something to say to this. And just like knowing that no one expects you to show up perfectly in an interview, just be yourself. And lots of time, like you have the prep and you might even have like the notes put up and then they ask you a question and it's just talking about you and who you are. So no, I don't think there's any questions really out there to try to be like tricky or anything like that. So just remembering they're just asking you about yourself and they just want you to show up as yourself. If you're more of an introverted person, like that's great. They're looking for all different kinds of people. And like a lab, you want different kinds of people in like a team. So just remembering like that is also a strength.
Great. Yeah, I love the idea of like preparing beforehand, doing the deep breathing, and then also recognizing that like everybody brings their own strengths to the table and labs, don't want just one type of person. They want a diverse group of people in their labs working on the research. Another question we have, what was the overall outline for your personal statement?
I feel like there's probably not just one way or one outline, but the way that I had mine, like how I like outlined my own personal statements just for like organization purposes, I'd usually have 3 paragraphs. The first one would mainly be about the topic of the project and why I was interested and maybe some of my personal experience and how they applied to the topic. And then my second paragraph would be talking about like the qualifications and like the skills that they were looking for and how I have like maybe some similar skills that could maybe be applied. Like I talked about my like a minimum wage job I worked over the summer and yeah, sure it's not science, but I still learned something from it. And so I try to like spin it in a way and be creative. And then the third paragraph was about like how being a part of the project would like be helpful in like my career or like how this is beneficial and like what type of like what would I learn from this like experience and why it was like really important to me to be like a part of the lab. So yeah, again, there's not one outline though that I think is the perfect outline. So
I agree with Emily. There's no one way to do it. I had a similar kind of structure where like I opened with like who I am, what I was studying, what I'm interested in, why specifically I'm interested in this project, what some of the things that I'm hoping to gain from the project, and then kind of my bigger paragraph was like, what do I bring to this project, and then kind of I did that kind of primarily through like the academic lens, but then in my last paragraph, I was kind of talking about the personal skills too. What like you as like a person, do you bring like what kind of like values or things like that do you bring as well, or just like personality traits like, oh, you're like flexible, hardworking, whatever that is, just like highlighting that you're a person as well. And then yeah, definitely connecting it to like how it's going to help you as a student, and beyond that as well.
Yeah, I think my general cover letter outline was pretty similar. My first, I guess, paragraph chunk was sort of about more like myself and my interests. I think I mentioned my major and, that I was a transfer student, and like mentioned my sort of interest in the project and like my interest in fungi, and like that's what they focus on in the lab. So I try to like make that connection in a way and sort of expanded upon, like what my interest was within it, and then like how what they're doing in the lab would sort of seems like a great opportunity and step to sort of learn further and sort of advance in like lab techniques. And then the second paragraph I think was more about like relevant experience, like any previous like wet lab courses I took, or things about that, the more like technical side. But yeah, like the panelists were saying, there's many different approaches you could do, but I think my strategy was to sort of like add a not like face to the cover letter, but more like a personal touch to where they aren't just reading like I've taken these courses and having a kind of a dry at the very beginning. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you all. I think you make really great points. Like they want to see who you are in this personal statement. And the more you can share about like who you are as not only like a student, but like a human being, more importantly, that's what the faculty and the postdocs are going to be really drawn to. Our next question is, what is the difference between URAP and SPUR?
Please correct me if I'm wrong, Sarah, but I believe like SPUR is specific to the College of Natural Resources. So I think students within the College of Natural Resources are only the ones qualified for SPUR, and then URAP is across campus. So you can apply to both of them as someone in CNR, but I think that's the main difference.
Yeah, you're 100% correct, Morgan. So SPUR is CNR students working with CNR faculty, exclusive. Nobody else, no other colleges get to participate in SPUR. And then URAP is university-wide. So you can have faculty who are, in the history department, or faculty who are in rhetoric or integrative biology. And I really encourage everybody, you can apply to up to 3 projects for SPUR and up to 3 projects for URAP, and, apply to, both. Put yourself out there as much as possible. And it's going to take you, far and increase your chances of getting research. I would also say, if you see the same like project posted on SPUR and URAP, and you're an RCNR student, I would encourage you to apply under the SPUR side and apply for other types of research through URAP. Great. Okay. So our next question is, what has been your favorite memory or favorite days when doing research in the fall?
I think this one is probably my favorite. So some of our research includes being on like a field, like a grassland, actually in a grassland environment. So sometimes we'll go on like a 3-hour drive to like Hopland, California. And I think those are really fun because there was one day that it was like my 2 postdocs and then 2 undergrads, me and another person. And we it started raining while we were outside. So the work is like outside, and it started raining, and I thought it was fun because we were all like working under the rain, and then eventually we had to like all go in like side of a cabin and kind of like wait until the rain stopped before we can like continue taking we were taking soil samples. So I thought it was kind of fun because we all like thought we could beat the rain and thought we wouldn't like get poured on, and so that was really fun.
Yeah, I'll go next. I guess offhand thinking of a fond memory is so part of the project is we're sort of studying a thermophilic fungus. It can like grow at really high temperatures, like 25 Celsius. And part of that is we're trying to generate mutant lines to sort of understand the genetic basis of what allows it to survive at such high temperatures. And pretty much the bulk of my project was to create these mutant lines, and it takes maybe 3 to 4 weeks from like start through all the incubation periods, and then like, you finally have your agar plates where the mutant colonies will start to grow. And then there's like, you know, a 2-week waiting period. And like the first time, like getting through the whole steps with my mentor and like seeing our mutant colonies growing on the plates is, yeah, an exciting moment, seeing the hard day's work come to fruition.
For me, like the memory that comes to mind at the end of last semester, we organized like an in-person get-together for everyone in the collaborative. So that includes professors, other UC faculty members, students, Karuk tribal members, and we all met in the Native Student Center and like all had dinner together. And it was an opportunity for everyone to kind of share how they got involved with the collaborative, the work that they've been doing, why this collaborative is important, what has like brought to them. And it was just a really cool moment to like be in community and like learn. I learned so much from just like what everyone had to share, and got to learn more about like the origins of the collaborative and things like that. So that was a really wonderful experience, and definitely felt a big sense of like community from that. So that was really cool.
Great, thank you so much for sharing. There's another question here on, are there wait lists for SPUR? If someone applies to 3 and gets into all of them, but only takes 1, will there be people put into the spots that they turned down? So I can answer this one. So faculty and postdocs are all kind of like rushing to interview and select their SPUR candidates before they get taken by other SPUR projects. So it can feel a little hectic, but you are only allowed to participate in 1 SPUR lab per semester, and I definitely check. And so if, you know, someone gets 2 positions, they have to turn 1 down. And then the faculty do have like a list of like, okay, this is my first choice. And then like, if they can't do it, then I will ask this other person too. So, you know, there is like a almost 2-week period between when the application closes and when faculty have to make their decisions. So keep checking the SPUR website. I'm seeing if you've been accepted or declined. And even though all of these participants participated in interviews, not all faculty do interview candidates. So you might have applied and not, you know, spoken to anybody, but you still got selected based on the materials you submitted. So you can always check your SPUR applications under My Projects on the SPUR website. Okay, another question from our audience. How did you decide what activities to include on your resume? What length do you recommend that it should be?
Yeah, so I think for the resume, there might be a recommended length, maybe a page for your resume, 1 to 2 pages for your resume. So I think sort of approaching it to see what, you know, listing courses that you took in the past or currently you're taking, and then even if you have like work experience, even if it's not biology related, you know, if you had some responsibilities or you know, anything that sort of might be a transferable skill into the lab, it's worth listing. I would say maybe just boiling it down to trying to keep it not, you know, like every single thing, but maybe the, I guess, most significant experiences for you, which I'm sure would, you know, translate best to sort of like share who you are to them when you're applying. But I believe there's a 1 to 2 page maximum. So yeah, so you can sort of strategize per project that you're applying for when you're building it.
Yeah, for my resume, I think I have like the 3 most either like most recent things I've done or like most relevant stuff first, and I have like more information. I maybe like 3 bullet points or 4 bullet points about those positions, and then I have like other work and like whatever volunteer experience at the bottom, and kind of just list that. So really just trying to like bring forth the most relevant things. And like Chris said, I don't think you need to include everything, especially if it's not super recent or like the most relevant. I think it's a balance between showing that you have experience, but also if you put too much, then the person reading it might miss kind of the key experiences that you have. So just consider that as well.
Yeah, I totally agree. My resume was only 1 page, but I only had, I think, maybe 3 activities, but I made sure to put like quite a few bullet points and also making sure that, or at least for me, I put like my most relevant experience to the top first. Even if it's not a job, like an activity or volunteering works too. Like I definitely had a volunteer experience there too. Again, just looking at the project description and looking at the skills that they're looking for, that's probably how you can decide like what activity you should put. Or again, for mine, they had like asked specifically for technical and like wiring and machine work. So I put my minimum wage job because I like had done work with like if there was a broken machine, like I worked in a restaurant, so if there was like a broken machine, like that I like was fixing that. So it was like you should like be creative and like thinking about what activities you've done, even again, if they're not science related, you can figure it out and make it science related. So
Thank you. Yeah, I think when we're thinking of transferable skills, you know, your work as a barista or your work at a restaurant, like you're engaging, you know, on a team, you know, collaborating with coworkers, you're sticking to a schedule and showing up to your shift. And, you know, oftentimes you're multitasking and juggling lots of tasks as well as, you know, customer service. And those are all transferable skills that you know, can be used in a research lab and team environment. Our next question is, are applications on a rolling basis, or will faculty not start reviewing applications until after the deadline? So I can take this one. So applications close on the 24th at 5 p.m. And then I send an email out to the faculty being like, hey, the application's closed, you now have access, like, please, you know, start reviewing now. So, you know, you can apply up until that 5 p.m. deadline, you know, pending any horrible technical difficulties that I am afraid happen at 5 p.m. always on a deadline. You know, the faculty are going to wait until the 25th to review your applications. So, you know, take your time, but also maybe don't wait until 4:59 to submit it. Our next question is, what do you believe are the most important skills to know for research?
The first two that like come to mind for me are like communication and being able to ask questions. I think it's really shows, even if you don't have a lot of experience doing the specific thing that you're doing, just being able to communicate with the people that you're working with. Really, when it comes to like scheduling and just showing responsibility, they being like, hey, I can't do this, I can't do this. This is the update on this. Just like being able to just be as like upfront. I think it shows that you're like very invested in the position. And then I think asking questions is really important. I think that's how we learn. So just not being afraid to do that. And also it does show that you're paying attention if you have questions, and just like if let's say your faculty members like, hey, like come find me if you don't understand this, and you don't understand something, like go find them, that kind of thing. So I think those are the two things that really show or can be helpful in a lab or research environment.
I would say I completely agree. I don't think there's like one like I think the main important skill that I also learned was, again, if you don't know how to do something, you should just ask. I remember like we were doing something during the field and they like had asked if I knew how to take a gas sample. And obviously with somebody with like zero research experience, like I just had to be honest and say I had no idea and that I needed them to like show me first before like I started to pretend like I knew how to do it. Like I think again, just being very honest and communicating with your postdoc about what you don't know is really important because they're more than happy to like train and teach you rather than you potentially ruining something or messing up some like important part of their experiment. So
Yeah, I definitely agree with Emily. Just and yeah, both the panelists of not being able to or not being afraid to ask questions, even if it seems kind of redundant. I feel like it's always worth double checking something just in case, and then, enough to where it's like sort of established in your mind. But yeah, I think asking questions and double checking things is a big one. And maybe also time management. Like if you have experiments that have like overnight incubation times or sort of times in between, especially with like a class schedule, sort of figuring out how you can fit each step sort of within your schedule. And then if you can, just speak with your mentor about, like, I won't be able to make it at this time. Could you do this? Or, sort of figure out the best plan for both of you. But yeah, I think open communication and just being able to ask questions and let them know what you don't know or understand. And it's really beneficial.
Is it common to continue working on your SPUR project even after the semester ends, aka like, can you get a continuation?
I can't speak for all SPUR projects, I guess, but the specific one that I'm in, I'm very grateful that during the fall semester that they offered, like, if I wanted to continue during the spring. So I'm still currently in the SPUR project that I was in during the fall. Again, I don't know how common or like, I again can't speak for all SPUR projects, but again, I was grateful that this time that they did let me continue the SPUR project.
Yeah, I have the similar experience to Emily. Towards the end of the semester, I like approached my mentors and were like, hey, are you all maybe looking for someone for next semester as well? And they said yes. And so I think at least two or all three of us who worked on this project last semester chose to continue. So that's a really cool opportunity too.
Yeah, I had a similar experience. I think the other SPUR students in the BREM lab and myself just had discussions earlier on about continuing in the lab and if we had interest. So yeah, definitely grateful got to continue in the BREM lab. So that's where I'm currently at. I think it depends on, I think when you're applying, the application will list if it's for 1 or 2 semesters. Like I think Emily's project, I remember looking at it, it said like it's sort of a 2-semester thing. So there's like 2 aspects of it. But yeah, I think they might explicitly list it. But yeah, I think it's a possibility, but it's all sort of relative to the project.
Great. What is the process like when you're offered a position? Is it possible to be offered a position from one lab, but still be waiting to hear back from your top choice? I don't know if any of you guys had an experience like that.
I think for me personally, I had heard back from the project that I'm currently in and interviewed with them. And then I think I heard back from them being like, we'd love to have you, and then got an interview position for another lab. And I just chose to, and I was like, oh, thank you so much for this other interview opportunity, but I'm deciding to do this one. I don't think I necessarily had to make that choice then before the deadline. I'm not really sure, but that's kind of what I personally chose to do. Not, yeah.
Kind of a similar experience. The lab that I'm in right now, where they were the first to reach out about an interview, and even I was already accepted. And again, the other 2 projects that I applied for, like I was hearing nothing back from them, so I just took the position that like because they had accepted me like a week in already, so I was like, I'm just gonna, and so I just applied, or I just took that one, and then any emails I got after, I just rejected.
Yeah, I think maybe a week after I submitted my application to the lab that I'm currently in, the PI reached out for an interview, and I think they were interviewing some other students as well. So we interviewed, and then I think it was maybe like a day or 2 after that, they reached out and said like, we'd be interested in having you if you'd like the position. So it seemed like it went pretty quickly, like once I did that initial interview.
So for our last question, if you continue on in your SPUR project, can you still apply to SPUR projects the next semester? I don't know, did you guys apply to any this semester? No. Yeah, I mean, by continuing on in your SPUR project, you're going into an agreement with the lab, right? That like they can count on you for the next semester and you can count on them for the research experience. And it's really important to honor our commitments like that. I'd also say, like, you know, these students are continuing on in their SPUR project, and if I saw their name on the you know, sheet for another project, I would have to send an email to them saying like, hey, you only get one, and you know, now you have to make that big decision. And so I encourage you, you know, like, research experience is really great, and you know, honoring the commitments that you chose to move forward with. Okay, great. So like I said, that was the last question that we have time for today. I want to thank you all for joining us. I want to give a huge, wonderful thank you to Emily, Morgan, and Chris. You guys were really fabulous panelists, and I'm so happy that you had such a wonderful experience in SPUR and that you continue doing research and growing in these labs.
Thank you, guys.
All right, thank you, everyone. Take care.
Thanks so much.
Thank you for having us.